Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek, and today I have an introduction to grading paper money video for you. And before we get started, just want to remind you that you can like, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things. And then also we do have memberships, and you can join. If you just check out the video description here today, you will be able to look and see, watch the video on that. In the meantime, we're going to look at currencies. So this is something you can do at home. You can go to the bank and get a stack of $51 bills or something like that and go through them. And what I want to talk today about is just how to grade paper money. And there's a lot of similarities to grading paper money as there is to grading coins. And that is to say, if you've never graded paper money before, you can do stuff just on a scale. Of course, torn corner, classic. You can start looking at the paper and making an assessment without any training at all as to what is in nicer condition than not. You can almost just start dividing them by how wrinkly the paper is, right? So you start to get a feel for just kind of where you're at on a wrinkly scale. That's going to be a not technical term, but the paper's firmness is to paper money what luster is to a coin, right? So the overall paper, so when you pick up a note and you hold it kind of by the back end and it stands stiff, that's going to be different than if you hold something by the back end and it's just kind of limp, right? So you can automatically just start picking them up. They'll almost tell you a little bit more about the grade just by how firm the paper is. So that is kind of like step one. In the same way that we did this with the coins, where you're just going to be on a scale, you're going to be moving all the way across the scale by grade. So you kind of start eliminating things. So once you get down to the notes that have what I'd call just total limpness or very limp notes, that's going to be these notes here at the bottom of this stack. After that, some of it comes down to actual wear and eye appeal. So notes actually wear down, and so one of the things that you'll see as you look at these notes, so of course they get worn down by lots of people handling them, and then you can see all these lines in them with folds. So today we're just going to cover notes that are circulated. We're not going to get into any uncirculated grades. But once you get into these lower grades, you start to look at the amount of wear on a note and see just how limp it is, how many times it's been folded, the overall wear, and you can start to assess those one against the other. So these two notes, which one do you like better? I'm going to ignore the fact this one's missing a corner just for this example. And I would tell you that once you start to see, there's almost more detail on the top note than the bottom note because of all the wear lines that are going through the design. So these notes are your basic just VG notes to fine notes. The hard part with grading paper money is that I know it's mysterious to most people. And right now I'm using kind of an ethereal process. I'm just going to talk about overall concepts and not using their specific vernacular that you may use for grading notes from PMG or from PCGS paper. But I want you to get used to the eyeball test. I want you to get used to being able to look at something and see that these lower grades, which are all going to be in that VG to fine range, and then you start getting into the notes that have a little bit of crispness to them, right? These are the notes that didn't just fall flat when you tried to pick them up. They have some crispness to them, and it's a little bit of the same thing. And so it seems like it's mysterious when you look at it at first, but really what you're looking at is your overall paper quality. Now, all these notes were somewhat stiff. Now we're going to look closer and see all the wrinkles and stuff on this note, and then all the wrinkles on this note as well, compared to these two notes here. So this is a little bit more specific. You can see that there are fewer wrinkles. And of course, one of the things that keeps the life of the paper strong, is having fewer wrinkles, less wear. So when you start looking at notes like these, one of the things I will point out, I know I ignored that hole in that other note, the corner missing, but one of the things that you always want to look at in paper money are for staple marks or pinholes. And so you can see that right there when you hold it up to the light. Usually when you hold something up to the light, it's where you can start to see the holes wear through, the holes pop through. So that's why if you're at a show and you see some paper money dealers they hold notes up above their head, they're not usually looking for security strips. They're usually looking for pinholes and things of that nature. So these guys, so when you look at these notes here that are a little bit more worn, these are going to be lower grade VF type notes, very fine notes. These notes are actually still probably very fine, just maybe a little bit higher grade than the notes before us, right? And so then we get to the notes that were a lot more crisp, and we have to start to delineate those. Let me clean my tray off here so that I'm not giving your eyes too many things to look at here at one time. Maybe I'll just make some paper money background wallpaper, right? Finally, by the way, when I did this, you'd be amazed at how many notes you go through on $1 bills that are not crisp. I'm gonna have to go get a fresh bundle from the bank, ask them if they have any fresh bundles. So finally, and by the way, that's the other thing to do is if you go to the bank, sometimes they call it Christmas money. If you go get fresh bundles, you can start to associate better what a very fresh, crisp note would look like. So finally, you start to get to notes that are very crisp, have most of their life left in them. And you'll see oftentimes the biggest culprit will be a centerfold. I know for some of you that's your angel, but I'm just telling you right now it's not good for paper currency. I am going to get the loop out finally for those of you who are wondering when we're going to get a closer look at something. Because we're not here to look at design in detail, but what I want to show you is, do you see that line that runs down the middle of the note? It's not the easiest thing to see here, but it is something that I want you to be aware of how it looks. So that line on that note is actually going to be right here. And that line goes all the way down. The reason I want you to see what it looks like on paper is because on this note, you can kind of see it because there's a bend near the top. But lots of times, if you get a note that looks uncirculated, but then when you look closer, you'll see the disruption of the paper. It has a fold somewhere. Now that's the tricky stuff because that's where you get into trouble with the AU to UNC notes. So this note here, I mean, once again, you don't want them with the big pieces of paper missing. It would be more of a lower grade extra fine with just a little bit of wrinkles to it. And then you start getting notes that are going to be closer to a higher grade extra fine with usually on extra fine, you know, they're actually pretty tough nowadays. If you start to see just one or two folds, you go to extra fine. And on occasion, you'll see a note that is AU that an extra fine, like if you get them graded next to each other, you'd think they're the same grade. It's just so subtle sometimes to see from one to the next. On an AU note, usually what you want it to do is basically look brand new. This note would be probably a low-end AU, actually, because I have the corners here are a little bit tweaked still. This is not the best example, but once again, the point of this exercise is that it's something that you can do at home, and you can start to get a feel for the difference of paper quality from one note to the next, so that grading paper money is not so mysterious to you. And you can really start to see when you put the notes next to each other in order the different types of quality. And it's the same thing as when we grade coins, in that you really start to kind of eliminate the possible grades when you start to look at the notes themselves, and you can start to move it along that scale that we talk about, from very beginning scales of VG all the way up to higher grades, very fine, extra fine, and then, you know, almost uncirculated. And then we'll make another video sometime just on you know, how to tell AU from CU and some other things. But this video is very specific about just getting the concept down of what banknotes should look like, from very beginning grades to very higher and middle grades, and it's the type of thing that you can try at home. So anyways, I hope that helps you look at paper money a little differently and get an idea of how to grade them. I'm Ben, the Coin Geek. Thanks for watching. You can subscribe by clicking on the owl button in the corner and watch more videos on the right side of the screen. Thanks.